This is Leadershipping. I'm Jeremy Lee. Good to have you with us. Today is a special episode. It's our 20th episode, and we're digging into one of the biggest myths in e-commerce: free shipping. For years, it's been sold as probably the holy grail of conversion. Add it to your site, and poof, fewer abandoned carts, right? More happy customers, but behind the scenes, the costs don't disappear. They just move. I'm honored to have with us today Justin Cramer, co-founder and Master of Eclectic Obligations at ProShip. Justin has designed, deployed, and consulted on over 300 shipping software implementations across retailers, manufacturers, 3PLs, pharma, you name it, he's probably done it. And, of course, the Department of Defense. Before that, he served as nuclear machinist mate, first class in the U.S. Navy. Thank you for your service. And worked as a software engineer. Justin, that is a heck of a intro title. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about this stuff than yourself. So thank you again for joining us.
Jeremy, thank you for having me. I mean, I've been pretty privileged in the opportunities I've had, and really happy to be on y'all's podcast.
Excellent. Before we dig in, we always like to start with a little bit of a fun question out here. You've gone from serving as nuclear machinist mate in the Navy to engineering software, co-founding ProShip, which is, it's a crazy trajectory in itself. What is one lesson from your Navy days that still shapes how you lead and solve problems today?
Very simple. Systems thinking. The looking at everything as a whole. So in a nuclear power plant, you have to think about the fluid systems, the steam systems, the electronic and the electrical systems, how as well as the mechanical systems, how they all interoperate with one another. We used to challenge one another by going, hey, I'm going to turn this switch off. How long before the reactor shuts down and why? Okay. And that type of, this causes a failure in the system, that shuts that down, this overheats, causes that whole cascading failure concept, the thought process that goes into it works really well in small parcel shipment execution, right? If you have a problem with your e-commerce suite, if you cannot communicate the appropriate shipping costs, your cart conversion starts to go down. If you can't actually move those into the ERP and move your orders from the ERP into the WMS, you can't pick your orders, right? Things continue to start to cascade. So when you're looking to implement a solution, you really want not just to solve a problem, you want to look at the entire systems architecture and ensure that your data is flowing in all directions appropriately and that you are anticipating some of the problems which could occur. So to me, number one, hands down, systems thinking.
That's wild. The connection of the dots, the way you explained it all makes perfect sense and everything. The level of severity is probably at a different scale, right? Yeah. I think about the tsunami that happened at the power plant in Japan, and just everything that they had to go through to deal with all of that. Mm-hmm. Not quite as severe in parcel though, at the time with your baby, your company, that type of stuff. When things are melting down around you, it might feel that same way. But I reassure you, the fallout outside of the company isn't anywhere near as dangerous. Talking about free shipping, this started, I don't know how many years ago. It was probably, a lot of folks put it around the Amazon effect. I don't know if they're originally the ones that, started offering free shipping or starting to put that together. But I mean, maybe a little bit better. Was there a single turning point or more, or was it more of a slow, cultural shift that kind of made shipping feel like a default expectation for e-commerce?
Well, you have to think when e-commerce first came around, you needed some way to gain a customer's trust.
Sure.
Right? Everybody was used to going down to the local main street, buying what they wanted. Even at this point in time, when this started, Walmart still hadn't done most of its expansion throughout the U.S. So, I mean, we really are looking at a history lesson here, unfortunately, right? Walmart was marching. And so it was a way to say, hey, look, you can trust us with that $100, $50, maybe $200 purchase. And we are going to make up for the fact that you're not going to get it today. And of course, when free shipping first started, average ship times were 4 or 5 days, right?
Sure.
That was free shipping. There was no free and fast, right? um, but it was something to help get those people that when we were back in 3-4% of retail going through online solutions, it was a really great way to incentivize people to, rather than going to the local store and buying probably somebody else's brand, right? Rather than doing that, buy on your website. You'll ship it. You'll take that cost up, and because of that, the pure digital e-com was able to be created. So it was a solution intended to solve the problem of the time. And I agree with you. As we look at where we are now with the problem, it's something that is eventually going to have to go away.
But, fast forward to, Amazon and like their, climb and rise in the marketplace and everything. They started to change things. And like, in your opinion, how has, what people call the Amazon effect reshaped, what they think about, shipping, and what role did it play maybe in like that whole free standard?
The interesting thing is that a lot of people blame Amazon. I always have to say, and Walmart, right? Because once Walmart realized Amazon was a threat, they did the same thing and then they tried to take it further. Okay.
Hmm.
So actually, what we saw is right about the advent of Amazon Prime and that free shipping, Walmart started coming out with its own low cost or free shipping, right? And then they started driving down the time, right? The faster, freer model. I think that was like many things we've seen in history, where two companies have competed with one another. It's hurt all the smaller companies in that industry. It set some very bad expectations for consumers. But there are many consumers who still think faster, freer is what they're going to get, and what the only way that's going to happen is if the prices go up, right? If
Yeah.
we look at credit cards, it's interesting. In my life, I've seen credit cards go to where there was as you walked in the building, if you're going to use a credit card, we're going to add 4% to your meal, right? For
Sure.
dining out, right? Now the credit card contracts don't let you do that. So what has happened to that 4%? You're paying that 4% if you pay cash, right?
Yeah.
So that is, it's just been baked into the price. Um, and well, the question 10 years ago with free shipping was, are we just going to have to start manufacturing our goods expecting, X% to cover the free ground shipping? Now, I think all of that planning kind of went out the window as we hit the pandemic, and we realized one of the other painful lessons for retailers and shippers is that one carrier is not going to be predictable for
Hmm.
decades to come. So all of a sudden, even if we wanted to plan the cost of free shipping into our goods, right, which you can do for high-end electronics, you can do
Sure.
for certain couture products and things of that nature, where you've got a 60% margin. You can't do that for the stuff that most of us purchase every day, which, if the retailer is lucky, has a 20% margin. In many cases, may have a single-digit margin. You can't hide $10 worth of shipping in 4% of a $10 item, right? The
Yeah.
mathematics just don't work anymore. Okay. Um, and so one of the things that we saw at the end of the pandemic was more of a free shipping was possible with some things, right? You need a $35 cart, you need a $75 cart, $100 cart, something of that nature, where we could start to squeeze some of that in the margin of the goods themselves.
Hmm.
But what you also saw is, and what I'm seeing slowly pick up, and a lot of our customers are trying to figure out, one thing that the US does not do well. Europe does this very well, where they actually poll the shipping software to go, hey, what is the cost and the time in transit going to be?
Hmm.
Therefore, I can tell you, I can say, hey, if you want it tomorrow, right? Maybe my cost is $15. So I'm going to put a small margin on there because, well, let's face it, my labor force costs money. So I'm going to tell you it's $17 to get it tomorrow, but it's only $5 to get it the next day because I've got like a $2.50 2-day service or something like that. And then if you want it beyond that, it's free, right? So this is where we start to look at, we actually start to take into account the real costs of that shipment, okay? And if not recovering those costs completely, at least offsetting them. It's one of those things that we're starting to see more and more here in the U.S. We've even done some where people have actually put a calendar, like a 2-week calendar, in their shopping cart, and there's a price for when you want to get it there, right? So completely up to you now. It's your choice. How much do you want to spend to get it, right? This is just one of the more creative things that we've seen. It's not out there everywhere, especially when you've got, again, still Amazon and Walmart saying, hey, if you're part of my loyalty program, you get it all for free, right? And that may be 1 day, that may be 2-day shipping, okay? But it is one of those things where the rest of us that actually don't have other massive profit centers that can offset or pay for the let's face it, free shipping is marketing, right? I don't know anybody who's got that huge of a marketing budget just to cover free shipping for everybody. But some of these extremely large retailers and pure plays, digital pure plays, they do have that because of ancillary things that they do.
Yeah. I heard something the other day on a report that I was listening to, and they defined it as there's companies that are price setters, and then there's companies that are price followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk a lot about Amazon, and they certainly have ancillary revenue streams. Like, not every company has giant data centers that they have. Like, Amazon Web Services are out there. I think people also forget that they pay an annual subscription for like Amazon Prime, right? Like, maybe they pay it monthly, maybe it happens annually, but you're paying well over $100 like to have access to quote unquote free shipping in the marketplace and whatever else. But to your point, like, being able to like set the price and the margin, like, the big players have the ability to do that, and they have a lot more weight to throw around. The other folks, they have to follow, and they have a lot more competition. And in the e-commerce space, it's never been more competitive than it is right now. It's never been easier to start an e-commerce business, and I've said this before, there's not a lot of brand loyalty, right? I can see 50 different places to get a specific item, and I can look around and see who can get it to me faster, who has better reviews and ratings, who's more trustworthy. Is this a scam, right? Like, is this a legitimate site? Like, all of these things are out there and probably going through people's minds, but you have options. And you also mentioned something there that I find really interesting, like the EU. They might be a little bit more advanced in how they do it, but we have to remember, like, Americans don't know or realize how old Europe is, and Europeans don't realize how big America is, right? Like,
yes,
getting something across the EU and getting something across the United States are completely different, like, tasks in like the technology and the networks like that need to be there in place to get something in 2 days across the United States. I mean, we're talking over 1,500 miles in some instances. That's a massive like accomplishment. So these are huge obstacles to try to overcome, and that we're constantly dealing with, and technology's getting us there. It's just a slower adoption with these tech stacks and trying to plug all the pieces in to get the right answers.
Yeah, think about it. When's the last time you cared whether something was coming from Georgia, New York, or Los Angeles? We don't even think about that. In the EU, they're like, is this in my country? Is it coming from the Benelux area, one of the largest 3PL areas in Europe?
Sure.
Or is it coming from Poland, right? Because a lot of that, not just the politics of it, right? Because the politics should have cleared all the thing, but that almost, you intuit, how long that thing is going to take. if you're in Italy and it's coming from Poland, okay?
Yeah.
If you're in the UK and you've ordered from Germany, you just naturally know how long that's going to take. But if you're ordering
Hmm.
you're in the UK and you're ordering from a UK firm, you expect next day delivery because, well, the islands aren't that big.
Yeah. No, it's small. Like in many cases, probably smaller than the state of Florida, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's a great segue into like talking about customer expectations and behaviors and everything. Like cart abandonment is one of those things that e-commerce companies track and keep their eye on. It's famously high, like something like approximately 70% or something right now, and that's probably partly because like you have a lot of options, and if you don't clearly lay out like what the cost is and when you're going to get things, like by the time you get to the end, people are like, oh wait a second, like I needed this by Friday, not next Tuesday, right?
Hmm.
Like, have you seen like checkout abandonment directly tied to like shipping fees or perceived unfairness at checkout, like almost like the bait and switch type of thing, if you will?
I will say that our information on this is mostly anecdotal because we
Okay.
are an enforcement solution. And so usually the only time I get to hear about this is at a trade show when the marketers finally come to talk to the execution end.
We did some
Uh,
surveys on this.
yeah. But what I will say is we do have a handful of forward-looking customers, and
Okay.
not only are they very doing a great job of providing a good costing in the cart with expectations of delivery times, but some of them have also gone from the cart and they've actually pulled their delivery times forward into the catalog. Okay, and what I mean by that is as you're searching through for a particular shirt, a Labubu or whatever the thing that's being
Hmm.
searched for, you got the 1 day, 3 day, 5 day. You start to see that in the cart. Okay, now the interesting thing
Interesting.
to me is that this didn't start with one of our direct to consumer customers. This started with a B2B customer that does high end electronics. And so if you have a network switch go down, you really do care if that thing's going to be coming from the opposite side of the country from you and take 2 days, right? Because, well, it's PM on the West Coast. And so the East
Sure.
Coast environment is already shut down, right? You care about that. Saw that a couple of years ago, probably 5 years ago, go into place. And we've slowly started to see some of our retailers do that as well. Because again, like you said, nobody wants that bait and switch, right? They
No.
want to know, and we see the potential for this to go forward with same day, okay? Because same day is slowly creeping up. It's like got the slowest momentum out there at all. Okay, but it isn't stopping, right? UPS purchased Roadie. DoorDash continues to do well. We continue to see a slow and consistent growth of same day carriers. And so as they continue to morph their model a little bit, we're expecting even more. All the more reason to identify to to tie those systems together, as I was saying to begin with, tie your order management system together so you know, does your local store in Chicago have that? So can you deliver that out to Vernon Hills same day for that customer? In Atlanta, do you have it in your Southern Atlanta store so you can get that to McDonough on a same day delivery? Having that tie in, that combination of inventory and the actual time in transit and costs from a ship and execution software really does uh, remove surprises, okay, and
And
build customer trust.
it does. And in order to execute on all of that, I mean, the planning goes even further back because you have to be looking at like historical trends. Where's your market at? Like, what type of products are
Mm-hmm.
they ordering? Is there seasonality to this stuff so that like you can position those products in those locations where customers are most likely to order them? Now, some of this stuff has been going on for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you understand a little bit of that, but like once you layer in the whole like ship from store, ship from a distribution center, like that
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it, like it's very easy to just like your brain starts to explode. You don't know where to start. Everybody just we'll worry about it later, right? Um, but it's coming, and like it's
Absolutely.
coming faster than anybody's going to recognize. So if you aren't thinking about it and you aren't taking those like strategic steps and like planning out not just your tech stack but like how you ultimately want to execute, like you're going to be left behind.
Yep.
I mentioned we did some surveys to better understand some customer patterns, and we shared those at Parcel Forum, and some of it was very surprising. So, previously over the last couple of years, maybe folks, there was a good percentage, I think, like maybe upwards of like 10 or 15% of folks, like they didn't care if tracking was available. Now, this year, it's gone almost to zero. So it's like people care that they know, they want to see where it's at and like where things are at. But the other thing that we saw, and you've talked about this a couple of times here, was rather than positioning a service type, you position a when you need to get it by, like how
Mm-hmm.
many days out. And that affords you the freedom to select a different carrier, select a different service type, depending on how they're performing, where you're winning and losing out there, versus like if you selected a 2-day service on a website and that thing shows up via like the post office or ground, you're instantly feeling like you got ripped off somewhere, right? Your trust value that you mentioned earlier goes down. And people are always still looking at this stuff like, where's the catch, right? So by transitioning and changing like what you're thinking about, what you're talking about to like, when do I need to get it by? I trust that they're going to get it to me by, Friday. That's when I need it. If it's 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, and it shows up in that time frame, I don't care how it gets there. Like if some random person
Mm-hmm.
shows up and drops it off, I'm good with it. So, folks, if you haven't thought about that stuff, like that is a great way to switch. Um, Now, hidden costs or trade-offs, this kind of touches on some of that people overlook when they do start including free shipping. This one bites a lot of companies in their rear end, and I'm excited to hear what you think about all of this stuff, because like I mentioned earlier, it's never been easier to start an e-commerce company, but it's also never been easier to fail as a new e-commerce company.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of hidden costs. There's a lot of let's face it. We use the phrase setting an expectation. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
when I go and I purchase from Amazon, I have an expectation. I expect to receive it tomorrow. Okay, just let's be honest. I'm close enough to like 3 centers. I expect I'm getting everything tomorrow. If I don't get it tomorrow, I raise an eyebrow, right? If I'm going to Apple, I expect a very great, no error anywhere. I expect a great presentation, even though I'm pulling this out of Corrugate. I have an expectation. So as you're setting that expectation for your customer, okay, whether that's the quality of the packing itself, the presentation once they get it, or the time in transit it's going to take. Again, let's not just think about one thing, the shipping piece of it. Let's think about the whole system, because it all comes together to either impress or not impress somebody,
Yeah,
influencing their desire to come back to you. Okay.
that's right.
Um, a lot of those hidden costs that I find, and I'm shocked that people still do this, is especially if you're doing a cart, you have to hit X number of dollars. What do we
Uh-huh.
often find is a lot of more dim weighting, right? A lot of people are buying items that don't quite fit in those boxes anymore. A lot of people are a lot of orders now, because we've gone from a one, average of one line item to an average of 1.4 or 1.5 line items per order, right? Now we can't just use the existing box that it comes in, even if it does have the stamp on it to say that it can be shipped on its own, right? With the appropriate
Mm-hmm.
crush requirements and all that. Even if you put it in an overpack, you're going to have a large enough overpack to fit those other items. And that's where all of a sudden we can see damage. We can see extreme dim weight charges. Um, uh, it's amazing how the dim weights just seem to be shrinking year after year after year. Okay, I remember
Mm-hmm.
when back in the day, some of them started out over 300. Now almost all of them are below 200. Okay, all the factors from every carrier is below 200. Um,
Sure.
so that's going to be a continuous battle going forward. And unless you're spending the time using either cubing logic software, using something that will create the box around it, or something of that nature, it's a big hit. And then finally, the one thing we see a lot of is what happens when you have more than one carrier. So as we're talking right now, in the middle of the day, all my carriers are available. Okay. Let's say I'm using the big three: UPS, FedEx, and the United States Post Office. Amazon's coming to your door there soon, by the way. They want to carry your packages as well.
Sure.
But let's just say you're using the big three. When one carrier pulls, let's say you're really far away from a hub, they pull at 3:30. Okay. For that carrier, it's tomorrow. But for the other two, it's still today. Are you taking these things into account? Are you still slapping labels for that third carrier as if they're going to leave today?
Mm-hmm.
If you just eliminate them completely, you're going to miss out on ones where you could still ship those items ground or their ground economy services. If you're not actually taking that into account, and if you don't actually have logic that works during that transition period between today for all the carriers and the next business day for all the carriers, right? You are leaving a lot of money on the table. Okay.
Yeah.
For some of our customers who ship tens of thousands of packages a day, that's tens of thousands of dollars per day per origin that they might be missing out on. Okay. So there's a lot of things to work on, but I just named a couple of things that some of them are outside of the shipping software. That last one is clearly inside the shipping software itself. And so again, like we started this thing off, look at the whole system, understand where your waste is, understand where inefficiency is, and 99% of the time is because you're not passing the right data from one system to another, or using that data when it's passed.
Yeah. You use generalized assumptions. I mean, you mentioned like, all right, we set a dollar amount. If we sell at least this much, our average margins are good. But what happens when, that last item is a 3 or 4 foot roll of wrapping paper that suddenly doesn't fit in the box with all the other like tchotchkes that you ordered or whatever the case is? Now you have 2 boxes or one really big box and your cost has gone up in that situation. Cut times, that's incredible. Like most folks outside of this industry, they're not thinking about cut times. You see some folks that, like some companies that are doing a better job, and I'm saying better because I don't think anybody's quite got it right, where they say like order by this time, ships today, like still ships today. But even Amazon doesn't get that right. It says like order within this time period and get it tomorrow. Well, they might already be on the next day at that point in time. And so like, the next day comes around and you're like, where's my thing? And it's like expected to be there and, the following day. And you're like, wait a second, did I get tricked in this?
And Jeremy, it's even worse come peak because every warehouse manager I know, horse trades. All
Yes.
right, I'll let you take a 3 o'clock pull today if you give me an extra trailer tomorrow that doesn't pull till 9:30, right? So how do you actually? I mean, that's a 3 hour shift swing in the closeout time, right? Are you automatically taking advantage of that, or are you having to do it manually, right?
And
And
warehouse managers never forget. They're like the elephants of the operation there. Like if they worked with one carrier and like they had a 3 o'clock cut time and it could have been 20 years ago. They remember that carrier only has a 3 o'clock cut time and will not work for my business because it cuts down how much time my team has to get orders ready and shipped out. So I cannot like work with them at all. So carriers,
exactly.
you got a big hill to climb because like, one bad experience, just like on like, what is it, Yelp or whatever like that. One person has a bad experience, the whole world hears about it. You have a good experience and nobody hears about it. I mean, we're talking, we talk about free shipping and, we can call it the biggest lie. I think it's like the biggest, as you mentioned, marketing or misconception that like consumers are ultimately giving it. And we're all playing, to it somehow. I mean, you've kind of given your thoughts on it. I have my thoughts on it. Like, is free shipping really free? I catch my wife, still trying to add items to carts and everything. She's like, I did it. It's free shipping. I just needed to add like $15 more in there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we work in this industry.
Versus
Like,
spend $7 on the actual shipping of the item you wanted.
yeah, did we need that extra thing? Well, we might, whatever the case is. Like, it works. I mean, it still works, but I think it's starting to catch up to the market where people are okay spending a little bit more for shipping, spending from like maybe a brand that gives a good presentation. There's a lot going on. Taking all of that into consideration, like what are some best practices, I guess, for like how you determine what maybe like that minimum order threshold needs to be in order to get some of that free shipping?
I'll admit that one is outside of my area of expertise. I would simply say do good math. Okay, make sure you're continuously looking at your margin, and I would fluctuate that throughout the year. Change your threshold as you need to. Okay, that's the one
Yes.
thing I don't understand. Right, as I talk about the execution piece, and we talk about moving those pickup times every single day, for possibly for every single origin point that you have. Right. Um, don't be afraid to set reality for your customers, because you're giving them an expectation, and what they want to know is the expectation you've given them is what they will experience. Okay, I travel a lot. I literally want to know what day things are going to appear, because, well, I'll either get it delivered to my house, delivered to my office, or I'll get it delivered to a pickup point near the hotel based upon the day it's going to be delivered. Okay, I'm not the only one. When I'm in airports, I talk to other people who could kind of do the same thing. But it's one of those things where executing and enforcing an expectation is the number one way to get a customer back. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying change that threshold if you have to. I may be
Yeah.
unhappy when that threshold goes from $35 to $50 carts, but I'm probably either gonna push it up or pay for shipping, because I trust that you're going to give me the experience I've asked for and paid for.
That's exactly right. And I've put together formulas for different people. I mean, essentially what you're looking at is like what is the average cost per item that you have out there? Like you got to kind of understand what the size of your items and the packability of it is. Then what is your average margin across all the different SKUs that you carry out there? And then looking at your historical cost per package, that's helpful, but you need to look at your forecasted projected, like forward-looking cost per package, because what you did last year, your costs are going to be higher. Even if you've negotiated, a new agreement after GRIs have come out, like your costs are still overall like going to be higher.
One of the things that we've been talking about is all the math, right? That's the best way to go about trying to understand some of this, is the math. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that the single most important thing for the math is the right back. Is, again, I'm talking systems, right? I always think systems, I always talk systems. You've got to take all that data that you're getting from your execution pieces, and you've got to get them back. You got to get them somewhere, whether it's a data lake, whether it is a third party, right?
Yep.
Somebody who's going to do analytics on that. If you don't have the data, all the things we just talked about, might as well just throw a dart, right?
Parcel spend visibility, right? Justin Cramer from ProShip, incredible resource, incredibly talented. If you took one thing from today's episode, it's this. Free shipping, not really, right? Someone's going to pay for it, and if you don't track your parcel data closely, that someone is probably you. The smartest brands treat shipping like it's a strategic lever, and I think that's really important. It's not a checkbox at checkout. At Sifted, that's exactly what we help you do. I've mentioned several times, like we help build the playbook for you to be able to know how you need to execute when crazy things start to happen. You know what the next play is that you need to pull. If you want to learn more, head to sifted.com. You can email me, jeremy.leet@sifted.com. My LinkedIn will be in the show notes. So don't be a stranger. I've heard from some of you folks. Please keep the messages coming. Thanks for listening. I'm Jeremy Lee. This has been Leadershipping, and we'll catch you next time.